Good evening, and welcome to this brief overview of the change cycle. I look forward to sharing this material with you. Over the course of the next few minutes, I will talk about what is the change cycle and where am I in the change cycle. And at the end, there'll just be a brief close and invitation. This understanding of the change cycle is from a really revolutionary book by Martha Beck called Finding Your Own North Star. That's been a real Bible for me over the years. And of course, there are many ways that the change cycle could be described or framed, but I think this is quite a powerful way of understanding it. So I'm actually going to start with square 4, which you can see in the lower left-hand corner there. In square 4, our life is going along pretty well. Everything is more or less working. Maybe we have to make little changes here and there, but let's say it's your work life. You have a good job, you enjoy it, everything's really going forward as you would hope. And you might think, oh, it will be like this forever. Well, the nature of our lives is that change comes along. And you can see on the far left, it says catalytic event, and then a little arrow pointing to it from transformation of identity. So what happens in our life over and over again is that this stasis will start to shift in some way. And it can shift for a number of different reasons. It can shift because there is a major event that comes in from the outside and just picks you right up out of that comfortable life. It could be that there's a layoff from this job that was so in alignment for you, and you weren't expecting it, and there it is. Or it could be that you're offered a new opportunity at a different job. That's the opportunity. Or, and this is often how it is with us, something in us starts to feel restless, starts to feel maybe bored or burned out with a particular, again, this could be any part of your life. I'm just using the job as the example. And it starts to shift our identity and our sense of whether or not we're doing the right thing. So it starts with square 4, and then it moves clockwise through the cycle. That after an event like that, let's say it's the layoff, there is this time of really tremendous loss and disruption, confusion, what we call square 1 or death and rebirth. And then at some point, that starts to shift into a time where the imagination, it wakes up out of the shock and difficulty of square 1 and begins to dream of new possibilities. And that's square 2. At that point, you aren't necessarily doing anything to make those possibilities become a reality, but you're sometimes literally begin to dream more vividly and start to have more significant dreams, start to have daydreams of what might be possible on the other side of this big change. And then square 3, which is sometimes called the hero's saga, is when we really begin to put those dreams into concrete action. And although that sounds nice, it can be a pretty awkward time, actually, where we try things and fail and try things and fail. It's a time of trial and error. And then at some point, we come back into where we are meant to be, and that's square 4. And at some point, that change cycle starts all over again. So I'm going to show you a couple of different versions of the change cycle, depending on how your brain works, that might be helpful for you as you work your way through this. So this is another version, similar. You can see the promised land down in square 4. In this case, square one is actually called dissolving, which I think is a pretty good word for it. And then square two is imagining. And then square three is reforming. And this one I like because it's really visual. It's actually using the life cycle of a butterfly to imagine this. So the butterfly is in a very certain form when it's flying around and sipping from flowers and finding a mate. And then at some point, it takes the new form of an egg after the eggs are laid, and a caterpillar is born. And that caterpillar goes on for a while, munching on leaves, growing bigger. And then at some point, that caterpillar also begins to change identity and goes into a cocoon where it essentially becomes mush. That's kind of the meltdown phase. And then inside that cocoon, the new butterfly begins to form, but it's all inner. It's all an inward process inside the cocoon. And then one day, that butterfly emerges into the real world and again begins to fly, the new butterfly. So I like to start with what I call pre-square one. And this is if the event is not something from outside, some either catastrophe or new opportunity, but more something inner, something within you that begins to find yourself no longer as peaceful with your life as it is. And you might feel restlessness or burnout, questioning. You might think to yourself, things aren't working anymore, but I don't know what to do about it. That's what I call kind of at the edge of the cliff. And then at some point, because of those feelings, you take a leap. And again, you could also be pushed off that cliff. It depends on your situation. But no matter how you get off the cliff, even if you're offered the best job on the planet, and you're still going to go off the cliff. And there's going to be feelings of loss and fear and confusion, grief. And this can be particularly surprising if, in fact, what's taken you off the cliff is opportunity for something better. Because it doesn't make sense. Why would you feel that way? But whenever you have left something stable in your life, these signs, these symptoms tend to appear. And to survive this, it's important to really grieve what you have lost, even if what is coming is better than ever, and to accept the time it takes to go through this square one, which that can be really challenging. None of us like to feel these things, and we want it over quickly. But to just know that it's part of the process, and to really get in touch with your essential self. In other workshops, I'll talk more about what that means, but that's the part of you, that your own inner wisdom. And the theme for square one is, I don't know what the hell is going on, but then to remind yourself, and that's okay. Square two is what's sometimes called dreaming and scheming. And in this square, there is new life, new energy. There's hope. There's dreams. There's wanting to try new things. Sometimes you'll find yourself rearranging your house in this square, or going out surprisingly and getting yourself a whole new wardrobe that you'd never imagined yourself wearing, and brainstorming new ideas. And in this square, to really value this time, to allow yourself to play with possibilities, to be comfortable with something that might just seem entirely out of your reach. And that's why the theme of this square is, there are no rules, and that's okay. Square three is the, where the rubber meets the road, you could say, where you really start to put some real plans in motion. Maybe at this point you're looking at jobs in an entirely new field, or you're starting to look at houses on the other side of the country, and you feel ready, and yet this is still a time of trial and error, of maybe discouragement. You're applying, you think you've got it all together, the best resume ever, and nothing's coming together. Or that house on the other side of the country, you realize, oh, it's almost out of my reach, it's impossible. So there's discouragement and impatience in this time. And to work with this particular square it's really important to be able to accept failure and be willing to modify your plans, to take tiny steps, what we sometimes call turtle steps, and to really savor the victories, savor the good things, even if they're small. And the theme for this square is, this is much harder than I expected, and that's okay. Again, things are often not so linear. We may feel ready, but the world and your own life are coming into a new alignment, and that can sometimes be a bumpy road. And finally, in square 4, your dreams have come true. You have moved into that new career that you had dreamed of, and you have found a new way of being in the world, whatever part of your life it might involve. And yes, there may be course corrections, but you are in the smooth sailing time. And I love this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't have to necessarily change again until the time is ripe, to really enjoy it and appreciate it and recognize that change will come again. And the theme is, everything is changing, to know that that is the nature of things, and that's okay. So this is just a reminder of the cycle again, going from square 1 through square 4, with that catalytic event between square 4 and square 1. Something has to shake things up in order to really start to move actively through that cycle. And these are the themes of each of the areas, starting with square 1. I don't know what the hell is going on. There are no rules in square 2. This is I prefer difficult rather than worse. This is much more difficult than I expected. And in square 4, everything is changing. And to remember that that's okay. All these feelings, all this process is as natural as a butterfly going into the cocoon and coming out, or the butterfly laying eggs, becoming a caterpillar, going into the cocoon, and then coming out another butterfly. So there's a lot of areas in your life where you might experience the change cycle. It's not only in your work life. Of course, that's an obvious one, but there's your living situation. Maybe you have a new person coming into your house, or a new pet, or perhaps you are moving across the country or into a new house. You never imagined you'd leave the house that you were in. There's your primary relationship. I mean, one of the major catalytic events that can happen in a lifetime is the loss of a primary relationship through divorce or through death. But there's also a new primary relationship appearing in your life, especially if you've been single. And this can lead to a lot of the feelings. This is one of those opportunity events that you might be surprised that you are moving through the change cycle when a relationship begins, as well as when a relationship ends. There's family situations. So for instance, a child going off to college, or a new baby being born into the family, especially a first child. Immense change, total change in identity. As one of my teachers used to say, when a child is born, the parents are born too, because they are not a mother or father before that child is born, or a mother and father, depending on your family relationship. So there are many shifts in families that can push us into the change cycle. And our spiritual life. Perhaps we were raised in one religious tradition, and that starts to feel like it no longer fits for whatever reason, and there is a change within. This is more of an inner change generally, but it also might involve a change in religious community or in the practices that you engage with spiritually. And of course, our health. One of the major catalytic events in a lifetime is a major change in health in yourself or in a partner. And as one person pointed out, old age itself, coming into a new era of life, perhaps with a major decade birthday, turning 80, and suddenly the things that have been the same for so long are starting to change, and you have to adapt and find new ways of moving through the change cycle. And even our community. For instance, perhaps we've had a group of friends for a long time, and they've been supportive of each other, supportive of us, and we start to outgrow those friendships. That's another example of where you might experience the change cycle and need to develop new community. So in my workshops on this, we'd have a little time for Q&A and a little time for writing. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that too, those of you who are watching this asynchronously. I do a coaching demo when I teach this and then a little closing. But here are the questions that I invite you to consider and do a little writing yourself. You could just put it on pause, put this little slideshow on pause. What areas of my life are changing right now? Again, going back to that list, where do I see active areas of change? And within those, choose one. And just explore for yourself, where in the change cycle am I in this area? What are the signs that tell me that that's where I am? And finally, what have I learned today that might help me navigate this change? So you can just put this on pause if you want and spend some time journaling, and I'll go on here. So I just want to mention some opportunities coming up. This is over the next month. I'll be doing another workshop. If you have watched this slideshow, you are certainly well prepared for the next workshop on part 2, which is sort of the that pre-square one, when change starts whispering in your ear. And then a little later in the month, a very exciting workshop that I'm doing with Heather Morrison Tapley, who is an Oriental medicine doctor, on The Body Knows the Answer, reconnecting with your inner wisdom. And of course, there's always an opportunity to do one-on-one with me if you're interested, or and I really invite you to, if you haven't already, to sign up for the mailing list. Okay, take care wherever you are on the change cycle. I am wishing you well, and go forward boldly into the changes in your life.